Good day, monkeys. I'm Eddie Braverman, that's Midas Mulligan Magoo, and this is episode 32 of Not Safe for Work on WallStreetOasis.com. This week we're going to discuss one of the hottest topics on the site in quite a while. Warren Buffett recently wrote an op-ed opining that the wealthy in the U.S. can afford to pay more in taxes than they currently pay, and that op-ed has ignited a new class warfare. So let's get into it. Now, before I get into what Buffett had to say and whether or not I think he's right, I think it's important to deal with one of the root causes of the debate, and that's our nation's strategy to deal with the current level of debt. If you look at it from a consumer standpoint, the U.S. is in the same position as a consumer who is maxed out. If the U.S. were a consumer, it would have an annual income of $52,000, annual expenses of $78,000, and total credit card debt of $700,000. Screwed, in other words. Now, if you're a consumer who's dug himself into a hole like that, the first thing you do is quit digging. You immediately freeze spending and you start eating ramen, right? So the spending cuts that the government is enacting, they're a start. But if you're in that situation, you don't just quit spending. You go out and get another job, or maybe two more jobs. I don't know, maybe you sell crochet condoms on the internet. In other words, you increase revenue. That's an absolute no-brainer. Yet the GOP, led at the moment by the Tea Party, is diametrically opposed to any increase in revenue. It's asinine. What do you think, dude?
Well, generally I agree with your overview, except I would point out the fact that we're also an indebted consumer with a giant, big steel nuclear missile cock pointed at every banker out there ready to fuck them in case they actually try to come and collect on what we owe. So that factors into the irresponsibility in Washington. But I think you got your actors a little bit mixed up, bro. I mean, the Tea Party, which, oh, by the way, nobody wants to mention, like our buddy Ron Paul, is made up of intelligent, well-educated, upper-middle-class folks who are just tired of footing the bill for all the welfare rapists out there. And if you want to increase revenue, you got to freeze the spending first. I mean, first you chop off the credit cards, then you start eating the ramen.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think it's stupid to get into party politics here, especially because we know who the party of the free lunch is and how many they've given away since the New Deal, and the fact that they can continue to do that all the time and still pass the buck. The national debt's definitely a problem, but you got to stop the spending first, and especially at the federal level, you got to set a trend. And at some point, you have to draw a line in the sand. And I think it goes back to the analogy that, you know, you've made a lot of times before about just ripping off the Band-Aid. You know, we keep pussyfooting about this issue. It's going to hurt. You might as well rip off the Band-Aid. You might as well cut the spending now. Obviously, revenue does need to increase. I'm sure Warren Buffett won't be hurt if we tax a few million more bucks out of him. But I think it's also the precedent it sets. And a lot of people are kind of reverting to the mentality that was popular in the 20s and the 30s of the past century, where the idea is that people who have more should pay for my sitting on the couch and not doing anything. And that's the thing that bothers me, and that's why I can't just simply say, you know, let's tax them to death, because there are other underlying issues and causes that are going to be a problem in the future if we go about it that way. So,
you know, you're right, but I got to take issue with one thing you said, and that's, you know, you're trying to say that the Democrats are the party of the giveaway. I think it's utterly, absolutely plain that there is not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties, between the Republicans and the Democrats. The difference is that the Democrats, they give away money to their constituents, and the Republicans give away money to their constituents. You look at these bank bailouts and all the bailouts that have gone on, I guarantee you, if you're going to go dollar for dollar, the Republicans have given away more money than the Democrats have.
I don't disagree with you. The problem is, and this is where the political correctness issue comes into play, is the fact that the corporate welfare goes to companies, it goes to high net worth individuals who pay big time taxes. I mean, I don't like the fact that a multi-billion-dollar company can get away with murder. But that multi-billion-dollar company hires millions of people. It pays for bridges. It pays for tolls. It pays for everything that needs to be built infrastructurally. People who are getting the handout from the Democrats are not the ones paying taxes. So yeah, okay, you give a little corporate welfare to somebody and they save $10 million, they're still going to be paying millions of dollars in taxes. You give a free lunch to somebody sitting on their ass collecting unemployment or welfare, that person's never paying back into the system. I think that's the core of the argument, and if there's a way to figure that situation out.
But when you weigh the difference, I mean, it's somebody on Twitter had it exactly right yesterday. They said that giving the big banks all this liquidity, hoping that it would work its way through to the consumer, is like treating constipation with an all-cheese diet. It's just not going to get through, and it's been an utter failure. But, you know, I see what you're saying, and I'm hearing over and over again about how the bottom 50% of the country pays no federal income tax and how that's not fair to the put-upon upper classes. You know, now, I do what I can to help you guys out, so consider what I'm about to say a public service announcement. Ooh. If you are making the argument about how unfair it is that the bottom 50% pay no taxes, stop, because you're making yourself look like a fucking moron. The bottom 50% of the country controls 2.5% of the nation's wealth. 2.5%. Everything that the bottom 50% owns in the world amounts to a rounding error. So quit making yourself sound like a jerk-off by advocating that they should pay more or that they should pay something. And I can hear it now, but Eddie, they should pay something. Everybody should have some skin in the game. Again, shut the fuck up. Skin is all they have in the game. Who do you think is defending this American empire? Wharton MBAs? You think they're taking a gap year before their associate stints to go fight in Afghanistan? Get serious. This country and our way of life is bought with the blood of the poor. The poor make up the vast majority of our armed services. All they've got is skin in the game. They don't get to do their patriotic duty with a fucking checkbook. Look, guys, it's simple math. The U.S. is in a deep, deep hole, and revenues have to be raised. I hate taxes as much as the next guy, but that's the reality. It's time to quit making these ridiculous arguments about freeloaders, many of whom are fighting and dying for us in shitholes overseas, and start handing the bills to those of us that can easily afford it. You know, the guys holding the other 97.5% of the nation's wealth. Am I right?
Ladies and gentlemen of Wall Street Oasis, may I present my learned colleague from the Parisian League of Politics. This is what happens when you spend too much time in fucking cafes with pseudo-intellectuals and berets and baguettes stuck up your ass.
Maybe so, man. I guarantee, I know I get more liberal the older I get. I can't help it.
Look, man, all this equality bullshit doesn't exist, man. And anyone who had to piss away valuable time to pull a 750 plus GMAT to get into that Wharton MBA program while the other bottom 50% was watching Dancing with the Stars and eating Cheetos knows precisely what I mean. There's a price to being rich. There's a price to being successful. There's a price to being at the top. And, you know, I hate to be spitting out all these cliches, but, man, it's lonely at the top. And this is how it works. The pyramid's always complaining that it's holding up the apex, but that's how it is. There's nothing that we can do about it. And, yeah, you're right. Every empire is built on the blood of the slaves. We just have a problem talking about that particular issue in this country for reasons that aren't pertinent to this conversation. But, you know, again, I'm going to bring it back to political correctness being an issue because things like this need to be discussed. You're right. A lot of poor guys go off to fight in shitholistan and are in some desert somewhere eating fucking beans out of a can. Some of them do it for patriotic reasons, and God bless them. But a lot of them do it because the military is a great way to climb the ranks to success, and has been that way, and has been that way in every empire since the beginning of time. And it's very, very, you know, arrogant of us to say that we can make things better or make things different. There are people who want it better than others. If you're broke and you want to be on top, you will get there. If you got to rob and cheat and steal, people have been doing it that way since the beginning of time. Why do we have to be the generation that's going to fix everybody else's faults from the past? We've seen in the past 100 years how terribly wrong things can go when you redistribute wealth and when you try to bring up that sort of populist mentality from the masses, and it's rising up in America. And that's a terrible thing because this is really the only country on earth that has always been insulated from that sort of thinking and behavior. And I just think it's a great big civilizational step back to be so arrogant as to think that we can change human nature, and the dynamic of human society is not something that you can control like that. So I just think you make a lot of good points, man, and it's definitely true, and we definitely shouldn't feel bad for any billionaire, anybody that controls 97% of the world's assets or country's wealth. But they earned that. Maybe they've inherited it. Maybe they killed somebody for it. But most of those people earned it, and they earned it honest and hard. So why should they pay for it?
I agree with that to an extent. I would say that probably a slim majority of the very wealthy in this country to maybe a large majority inherited the wealth, so they didn't earn it. But that's not for me to say whether they deserve it or not. Frankly, I don't give a shit.
Right.
My point is, quit asking the poor to pay more. Because the simple math states they don't have the fucking money. So quit asking. Either that, or if you want them to pay, reinstitute the draft so silver spoon cocksuckers like Dick Cheney can be in the face of a fucking bullet, and think about how much better this world might have been if that was the case. So
only if he took Joe Biden with him.
Yes, I'm just saying, if you want things to be fair, make them fucking fair. Reinstitute the draft with no deferments and let these rich pricks go carry the load for a while. And, yes, I'm ranting, and it's silly because this isn't going to amount to anything, but my point is, get off the poor. They got no money. They can't help you. If they gave everything they had, it wouldn't amount to shit. So let's fix the problem.
Well, this is why the guy that made the post about mail-order brides had the right attitude. Let's go out and buy ourselves some wifeage and stop worrying about all this intellectual crap. Go get me a fucking beer, goddammit.
All right. Well, that's all I got this week, man. You got anything else?
Nah, man, me neither. I gotta go get over this hangover and get back to drinking myself. I see you're way ahead of the game.
Well, that reminds me. I'm not going to be around next week. I'll be around this week, but I'm going to be in Ireland all next week. Trying to send this summer off in high fashion, so we won't have a show next week, but we will the following week. So, in the meantime, it looks like it's going to be kind of a hairy week in the market, depending on what happens over here in Europe, guys. So, As always, keep your heads low and your powder dry, and we will see you next week on Not Safe for Work.
2 weeks, but who's counting?
2 weeks, sorry. Yeah. All right, guys, be cool.
Take it easy.